The gods made wine to compensate for those who can't afford to take revenge. But oh my, Hari Seldon got a taste of that sweet nectar in the closing moments of the episode. Whilst mainly on Ignis, this episode was a relatively slow one which had quite a lot of developments and an ending that I feel saved it from feeling like one where not much really happened. With Tellem not being who she appeared to be when she first introduced herself, the Mentalics are definitely a species that are interesting to learn about, and I'm hooked on finding out more about their abilities and intentions as the season develops. So with that, let's recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this episode. Here is Foundation Season 2, Episode 6, Ending Explained. Hari Seldon. I'm going to start with the parts of the episode that I thought was most definitely the most interesting of the entire runtime. This was the final part of the episode where we saw Hari Seldon's life flashing before his eyes, before succumbing to the water that rose above him. But there was one moment in particular in this episode, and this final scene connected to something in particular, and this was the scene that we saw open the entire episode and essentially close it. Tellem made out that Seldon had taken the beaker and left planet Ignis. This was due to one of the Mentalics appearing as him for Gaal and Salvor, when in reality, Seldon was being kept trapped in water where he was soon to be killed by the tide that was coming in. Tellem didn't like Seldon and didn't want his vision of a second foundation to be made in the name of the Mentalics. She didn't want her children to be the warriors and army that were to fight against the Mule in the future and be the ones that would look to prevent the crisis. This was due to the persecution that the Mentalics had faced at the hands of all of the humans that they had come across in their lives. They were cast as outsiders, killed and hunted because they were different, and Tellem didn't believe that they should be out there helping prevent something which would destroy the very people that she despised. That was one of the main reasons as to why she didn't want to help Hari as well, because he wasn't a Mentalic. She wanted Gaal to essentially become the leader of the Mentalics following her death, and in order for that to happen and rule the way that she wanted, Hari needed to not be around, because she feared that Hari would mold her mind. However, in reality, she was molding Gaal's mind and was showing her what she wanted to see, and telling her what she wanted to hear, which was that there was a way of saving Salvor from the Mule in 100 years' time. So with Hari on the verge of death, we saw an extremely well-articulated short story with a digestible and gripping delivery. We saw Hari in one location as a child, learning the pattern of a species movement that he later came to control and utilize as a weapon of choice when he killed the very person that took away the love of his life and mother of his unborn child, Yama. The interest in his work of psychohistory was something that the Empire wanted closer to them, as they viewed him as a threat, and they were doing all that they could to get him on Transor so that he could work at Streathing University, something which he didn't want to do, and in return, Empire and the Assassins took Yana as leverage. However, because of the chain that Yana gave him earlier on in the vision, it contained the beating heart of their child, so when it stopped beating, he knew that she was gone, despite the fact that they were saying that she was still alive. Hari totally owned that moment and showed what he was fully capable of doing. It was well thought out, and it was the revenge that he wanted to seek. However, the memory of it was something that he had buried deep within his mind, and the Mentalics were utilizing it as a way of making him feel uncomfortable. Hence why it was the first thing that we saw when the episode opened, showing the value that it was going to go on to have. The closing moments of the episode were of Hari struggling to fight the water that was rising above him, and his life flashed before his eyes. It looked as though he died, and I think that he is most definitely dead in this instance. There was a lot of focus on death and resurrection in this episode, whether it be trying to understand why Kali put his consciousness back into a human form, or also the understanding that there were two Seldons out there with an emphasis on the fact that the one in the vault wasn't a superior and didn't know everything that the original one did. So with Hari now gone, I do wonder what that means for Gaal and Salvor on Ignis. There was a line in the episode, if you can't trust your own mind, then what have you got? And it's safe to say that both Gaal and Salvor did not have control over their own minds at that moment. So things are most probably going to get a lot worse for them. Gaal is extremely powerful, and I feel when she finds out what happened to Hari, then she may turn on the Mentalics' current leader. At least, I hope she does. The Mentalics. We got a good understanding of the Mentalics in the opening part of the episode, and we learned a little bit more about what they do and the troubles they faced on other planets. The boy with the skull was the one main individual that we learned it through. For example, he articulated the ability of unvoicing, something where you can essentially speak through thoughts. It was the main way that the Mentalics communicated with each other, and it was brought to light when it was complete silence, but they were all together. Tellem claimed to have been able to have heard the voices of the Mentalics spread all around on the different planets, and she went around and saved them all, something which we saw when all of the individuals had their arms up at Salvor. In terms of the other abilities that they have the ability to plant something in front of a subject that they're targeting and make them believe that that thing is actually there. They can enter a subject's mind and view it as a physical space. They can think outwards, which essentially means that if something happens in a vision, it can affect their physical environment, such as when the mule had his hands on Gaal, it left marks on her in the space that she was in because she thought outwards. Plus, it also seems as though they have the ability to move through space in a way that is extremely fluid. It almost feels as though Tellem is the Mentalics Seldon. She promises them safe haven and they treat her as if she's some kind of messiah, which makes sense as to why she didn't want to have Hari around, because it could change the mindset of the people that she refers to as her children. In terms of Gaal and Salvor, Gaal doesn't really know how to feel about Salvor when it comes to being her mother. It's clear to see that she's conflicted in going against Hari Seldon's plan and vision, but due to Salvor ultimately dying at the hands of the mule, she's clinging on to any chance of hope in keeping her alive, even if it means going against the science that she originally believed in. So her pivot is something that's going to be key in ensuring that what she saw will most likely happen in reality. Trentor and Hova Mallow. As mentioned, most of what we saw in this episode was on Ignis. However, there was a short section that we saw being present with Brother Day and the Empire. He stated how he was putting an end to the genetic dynasty as he was going to be ruling alongside Sareth. It looked as though he unveiled a statue of Empress Hanley, an empress who had a dynasty that covered 4 times the area of the Cleonic one. But I may be mistaken in thinking that it's Hanley. It just had a very similar resemblance to the artwork that was present in episode 2. Within this scene, we also saw Sareth deliver a speech that was the complete opposite to what Day stands for. It didn't have an iron fist. Instead, it was one which mentioned how they were there to serve the people, rather than be the rulers. Something which it was clear to see Brother Day wasn't happy with, so their relationship is something that I think is going to be interesting. The looks that Sareth shared with Brother Dawn is something that also makes me think that she could be trying to dismantle the brothers from within. We also saw that Constance and Polly were taken as prisoners of the Empire following a heartfelt speech that was delivered by Polly when they landed on Trentor. Plus, Hova Mallow found his way into a vast amount of emptiness, to which it looked as though he saw somebody like She Shines Brightly, the spacer which was speaking with Constance earlier on. He was met with and asked why he had defiled the home swarm, something which does sound quite serious, so I imagine we'll find out what happens to him in the next episode. He means no harm, so I don't think anything will come of it. Overall review. I thought this episode was okay. It was definitely enjoyable, but I feel the final third saved it from feeling as though not much really happened. I did really enjoy learning about the Mentalics and also how they came to be on Ignis. I do have to say though that I'm finding Gaal and Salvor some of the least interesting characters in the show, which I think is an issue if I'm being honest. It feels like no real development gets made between them, and we're no further along with their arcs than we were a couple of episodes ago, other than knowing that they're now Mentalics. Seldon is one that I do find that I enjoy watching a lot, especially in this episode where we saw the flashbacks. I enjoy seeing what goes on with Constance and Polly too, and also all that happens on Trentor with Brother Day, Sareth, Gamazal, and the other brothers. But Gaal and Salvor, maybe it's just a slow burner, and it will feel rewarding in the long run. With Seldon looking like he's no longer going to be around, it most definitely shakes things up for the remainder of the season. I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. So, there you have it. Foundation Season 2 Episode 6, Ending Explained.